The wind howled across the frozen wasteland, carrying sharp pieces of ice that cut like blades. The storm had no mercy. A lone human traveler pushed forward, each step heavy in the deep snow. His breath turned to clouds, freezing almost as soon as it left his mouth. He was tired, his hands numb even inside his thick gloves. The sky above was nothing but a swirling blur of gray and white. He had chosen to travel this path because it was shorter, but now he wondered if that decision had been a mistake. On this alien planet, the storms could last for days, and death came quickly to anyone caught outside. Still, he moved on, forcing himself to lift one foot and then the other. His survival depended on reaching his small wooden shelter before the storm swallowed him whole. Then something strange caught his eye. Through the heavy curtain of snow, he thought he saw shapes. At first, he believed it was a trick of the storm, just the shadows of rocks or frozen trees. But as he came closer, he realized it was not stone. Two dark forms lay half buried under the snow. He stopped, heart pounding. His instincts told him to stay away. Many times before, travelers had died here, frozen stiff, and scavengers had learned to hide among the dead to lure the living. Was this another trap? He bent low, brushing away the ice with one gloved hand. What he saw made his breath catch. It was not a rock, not even a human. It was a girl. No, two girls. Their bodies were pressed together for warmth, arms around each other, their skin pale blue and glowing faintly where the snow had melted against their bare arms. Their faces were delicate, almost fragile, and their lips were turning purple from the cold. He could see their breath, weak and shallow. Aliens. The human froze, staring. Stories had spread about these kinds of encounters. Aliens in the wilderness, outcasts, sometimes bait for raiders. He knew better than to trust too quickly. And yet he could not look away. These two were dying right in front of him. A battle started in his mind. If he helped them, he would risk his life. Carrying them through the storm would slow him down, maybe kill him as well. But if he walked away now, their last breath would vanish in the snow, and their bodies would become nothing more than another warning on this merciless land. He knelt down and checked their pulse. Weak but alive, one of the sisters stirred faintly, her eyes opening just a little. Her gaze was unfocused, but she seemed to see him, and her lips parted. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. A small hand reached up, trembling, before falling back into the snow. That was enough. Cursing under his breath, the human pulled his pack from his shoulder and threw it aside. He lifted the first sister into his arms. She was light, far too light, like a starving bird. He looked at the second, still lying in the snow, and his chest tightened. Leaving her was impossible. So he bent again, forcing both girls against his chest, their cold bodies pressed to the warmth of his coat. The storm roared louder, as if trying to rip them away from him. His boots sank deep into the snow, and every step became a battle. His muscles screamed. His lungs burned. But he held them close, refusing to let go. The world around him vanished into white, but he did not stop. He had no idea who they were, what danger might follow, or what trouble he had just brought onto himself. All he knew was this: if he let go now, they would die, and so, with two alien sisters clutched in his arms, the human pressed forward into the storm, toward the faint hope of shelter, toward a future he did not yet understand. Behind him, the snow already covered the place where he had found them, erasing every sign of their presence, as if the storm itself wanted to hide the secret he had just uncovered. The wooden shelter creaked as the storm slammed against it. The human kicked the door shut behind him and staggered inside, both alien girls limp in his arms. His breath came in ragged gasps and ice clung to his beard like sharp crystals. For a moment he just stood there, the warmth of the fire struggling to fill the small space. His muscles ached, but he refused to loosen his grip until he lowered the sisters onto a rough bed made of blankets and animal furs. They looked lifeless. Their blue skin carried a faint glow under the firelight like frost touched by sunlight. Their clothes were little more than thin rags soaked from melted snow. The human cursed softly. He had seen travelers die of cold before, and he knew he had only minutes to act. Quickly he piled wood into the fire until flames roared high, throwing waves of heat across the cabin. He peeled the wet fabric from their bodies, wrapping each sister in his thickest blankets. Their fragile chests rose and fell, but the rhythm was weak, too slow, like a candle about to flicker out. He rubbed their arms and hands, trying to force warmth into their bodies. One girl's lips parted slightly, releasing a soft whimper that was more painful than silence. The sound told him she still fought for life, but it also reminded him how close she was to losing it. The human pressed his water flask against the first sister's lips. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a trembling effort, she swallowed a few drops. Her throat moved and her eyelids fluttered. Her sister, still unconscious, let out a weak shiver, and he hurried to give her the same. Minutes stretched into hours. He stayed by their side, feeding the fire, rubbing their skin, listening for every breath. His hands were raw, but he didn't care. He couldn't stop. Finally, one of the sisters stirred. Her eyes opened just a sliver, revealing deep silver irises that glowed faintly in the firelight. She stared at him, confused and afraid, her lips trembling as she whispered a word in a language he didn't understand. "Shh," he said gently. "You're safe now." She blinked, as if trying to decide whether she believed him. Her eyes rolled back and she drifted into a restless sleep again. The human leaned back against the wall, heart pounding. He had faced blizzards, hunger, even predators, but this felt heavier. Saving 2 lives carried a weight he hadn't expected. Suddenly, a sound outside broke the silence. A crunch of snow. Footsteps. He stiffened, hand reaching for the rifle hanging above the fireplace. Slowly, he stood and peered through a crack in the wall. Nothing but the endless swirl of white. Still, the sound had been real. He could feel it in his gut. Someone or something was out there. He returned to the sisters, checking them again. Their bodies were warming, but far from safe. If danger came now, he would have no choice but to fight while they lay helpless. The thought chilled him more than the storm ever could. Hours passed, and the fire dimmed. He fed it again, exhaustion pulling at his eyelids. Just as sleep began to drag him under, a weak voice cut through the silence. "Leave." His eyes shot open. One of the sisters, the elder he guessed, was awake. Her voice was cracked and broken, but her words were clear. "You must go. They will find us." He leaned closer. "Who will find you?" She shook her head weakly, tears welling in her glowing eyes. "Hunters. They do not stop. If you stay, you die too." The human's jaw tightened. He wanted answers, but pushing her now might break what little strength she had left. He laid a hand gently on her shoulder. "I'm not leaving you," he said firmly. She stared at him as if she had never heard such words before. For a long moment, silence hung between them, broken only by the storm outside. Then her eyes closed, and she slipped back into sleep, a single tear rolling down her cheek. The human sat back, his mind racing. Hunters. That explained why the sisters were left to die in the snow. But why were they hunted? What crime could force 2 fragile girls into such punishment? He looked at them again, curled together beneath the blankets, their faces soft in the glow of the fire. He didn't know their story yet. He didn't know the danger waiting outside. But one truth was already clear. Walking away was no longer an option. The storm raged on, but inside the small cabin a fragile bond had begun to form. It was not trust, not yet, but it was something stronger than the storm outside, hope. And in that moment, he made a silent promise. Whatever hunted them, it would have to go through him first. The storm had passed, leaving behind a silence almost too heavy to bear. The cabin walls no longer shook, and only the faint crackle of fire filled the air. The human sat near the hearth, his rifle resting across his lap. His eyes remained sharp, scanning the door, the window, even the shadows in the corners. He had not forgotten the sound of footsteps outside. Behind him, the 2 alien sisters stirred. Their breathing was steadier now, no longer shallow gasps. The blankets wrapped tight around them glowed faintly where their blue skin touched the fabric. Slowly, the elder sister's eyes opened. Her silver gaze fell on the man, cautious and full of questions. He turned when he sensed her watching. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then in a voice still weak, she whispered, "Why?" He frowned. "Why what? Why save us?" The question carried more than simple curiosity. It was heavy, like a weight she had carried for too long. The human leaned forward, resting his arms on his knees. "Because you were dying," he said simply. "And I was there." She stared as though struggling to believe such an answer. Her younger sister shifted beside her, half waking before slipping back into sleep. "They would not have done the same," the elder said at last, bitterness in her voice. "Not for us," he studied her carefully. "Who are they?" Her lips pressed into a thin line. She glanced at the sleeping girl and then shook her head. "Our clan, our people. They call us cursed, broken. Better left in the snow than carried home. The human's brows drew together. He had heard stories of alien tribes casting out their weak, but seeing the proof before him twisted his gut. He glanced at the younger sister, who looked fragile as glass, and felt anger stir inside him. "You're not broken," he said firmly. "I saw you fight to breathe. That is not weakness." Her silver eyes widened slightly, as though no one had ever spoken such words to her. She looked away, but not before he caught the shimmer of tears. Hours passed, the silence between them broken only by the fire's crackle. When the younger sister finally woke, she clung to her elder's arm, eyes wide with fear. The human offered her water, but she flinched as if expecting a blow. "It's all right," he said gently. "I won't hurt you," the elder whispered in their language, and the younger slowly accepted the flask. She drank, though her hands shook so hard the water spilled down her chin. The human watched closely, noting how they leaned on each other for strength. Sisters, yes, but more than that. Survivors bound by pain. When night fell again, he spread extra wood on the fire and sat awake while the sisters dozed. The hunters were still out there. He could feel it. And soon they would return. His suspicions proved true. Near midnight, the faint crunch of snow reached his ears once more. This time it was closer, deliberate. His grip tightened on the rifle. He crossed the room silently and pressed his back to the wall beside the door. The footsteps stopped. For long minutes the world was silent. Then a shadow passed across the frost-stained window. He caught only the outline, tall, armored, carrying weapons that glinted even in the moonlight. The sisters stirred as though sensing the presence. The elder's eyes snapped open, fear flashing across her face. "They found us," she whispered. The human's chest tightened. He gestured for silence and eased toward the door. He could hear muffled voices outside, speaking in the same tongue as the sisters. Though he could not understand the words, the tone was unmistakable. Command, warning, threat. The elder shook her head violently. "You cannot fight them. They are hunters. They will kill you for us." The human gave a thin, grim smile. "Then they'll have to try." For the first time, she reached out and grabbed his hand. Her fingers were cold but strong. "If you stay, they will never stop. They will hunt you too." He looked into her desperate eyes. "Let them. I don't run." She swallowed hard, as though something inside her cracked at those words. Slowly she let go, her shoulders trembling. Outside, the hunters moved away, their footsteps fading into the distance. Perhaps they had only been scouting, waiting for the storm to weaken before striking. The human returned to the fire, heart still racing, eyes never leaving the door. The sisters watched him with a strange intensity. The younger whispered something to the elder in their tongue. The elder hesitated, then answered softly. The human didn't know what they said, but the way they looked at him was different now. Not only with fear, but with something new, something closer to trust. The night passed without another sound. But he knew it was only the beginning. The hunters would return. The sisters' secrets were heavier than they admitted, and when the time came, he would have to choose: leave them to their fate, or stand against whatever enemy chased them through the snow. For now he sat by the fire, rifle across his knees, while two fragile lives slept under his roof. He did not know why destiny had placed them in his path, but he knew this much: he would not let them die again. Morning came pale and weak, the sun no more than a ghostly blur through the frozen clouds. The human sat awake by the fire, rifle across his lap, eyes red from a night without sleep. The sisters slept close together under thick blankets, their glowing blue skin faint beneath the cloth. He listened to their slow breaths, steady now, but his mind carried only one thought: hunters. The memory of shadows outside the window haunted him. They were not gone. They were waiting. He could almost feel their presence in the snow-covered forest beyond the cabin. He had fought storms before, fought beasts, but this was different. These were men, or something close to it, trained and relentless. The elder sister woke first, silver eyes watching him quietly. "You stayed awake all night," she whispered. "I've had worse nights," he answered. She studied him, her face unreadable. "They will come soon. You should leave before it is too late," he gave a dry laugh. "And leave you to them?" "Yes," she said firmly, though her voice trembled. "We are not worth your death." The human leaned forward, his gaze sharp. "You're alive. That makes you worth something." She looked away, but not before he saw the glimmer of emotion in her eyes. By noon, the storm had weakened, leaving a world silent and white. The younger sister finally stirred awake, frightened eyes searching the room until they found her sibling. She whispered in their language, clutching her arm, and the elder soothed her with gentle words. The human didn't understand, but the bond between them was clear. He wanted to ask more questions, why they were hunted, what their clan had done. But the chance never came, because the hunters returned. It began with a howl, sharp and unnatural, echoing across the snow like a signal. The human's hand snapped to his rifle. He moved to the window, eyes narrowing as shapes emerged from the forest. Dark figures, tall and armored, their weapons gleaming. This time they came in numbers, 5, maybe 6. The sisters stiffened. The younger whimpered and buried her face against her sister's chest. The elder whispered something desperate in their tongue, then turned to the human. "You cannot fight them," she said. "They kill without mercy. Please, run. Save yourself." The human checked his rifle, sliding a fresh round into the chamber. His voice was calm. "Not happening," her voice cracked. "Why? Why risk your life for us?" He looked at her, steady and unflinching. "Because I won't stand by while bullies decide who lives and who dies." Before she could answer, the first strike came. The cabin shook as something slammed into the door. The younger sister cried out. The human raised his weapon, finger tight on the trigger. "Stay low," he ordered. The door burst open, splinters flying, and 2 hunters stormed inside. Their armor glowed faintly, masks hiding their faces. They moved fast, blades drawn, expecting an easy kill, but the human was faster. The rifle cracked like thunder, the first shot punching into a hunter's chest and dropping him instantly. The second lunged, blade flashing, but the human swung the rifle stock hard, smashing into the mask and sending the attacker sprawling. The sisters gasped. They had never seen anyone stand against the hunters. More shadows filled the doorway. The human fired again, then ducked as a blade sliced through the air where his head had been. He rolled across the floor, grabbing a knife from his belt, and drove it upward into the attacker's side. Blood spilled dark against the snow-covered threshold. The fight was chaos. Gunfire, steel, the sharp crack of wood as the cabin shook under the assault. The sisters huddled in the corner, clutching each other, whispering prayers in their strange tongue. When the last shot rang out, silence fell heavy. The human stood panting, his coat torn, a thin line of blood across his cheek. 3 hunters lay dead inside, 2 more outside in the snow. The last had fled into the forest. The human lowered his rifle slowly. His arms trembled from exhaustion, but his eyes were hard as iron. The elder sister stared at him, her lips parted in shock. "You fought them, alone." He wiped the blood from his cheek with the back of his hand. "Someone had to." The younger sister's voice was small, trembling. "No one ever fought for us before?" The human looked at them both, his chest heaving. "Get used to it." For a long moment, silence filled the cabin, broken only by the crackle of fire. Then, in their language, the younger whispered something to her sister. The elder hesitated, her eyes shimmering, then nodded slowly. They turned back to the human, voices soft but clear. "You are not just our savior," the elder said. "You are something more," he frowned. Unsure what she meant, but before he could ask, she lowered her head, whispering a word that chilled him with its weight. "Husband." The cabin smelled of smoke and blood. The fire crackled, but its warmth could not erase the memory of the fight. Outside, the storm had quieted, leaving the forest heavy and still, as though even nature itself waited to see what would happen next. The human sat against the wall, rifle beside him, his muscles aching from the battle. 3 hunters lay outside in the snow, their bodies already half covered by frost. The sisters had cleaned the floor as best they could, dragging broken wood and bloodstains into the corner. Yet silence hung between them, thicker than the smoke rising from the fire. The younger sister watched him constantly, her wide silver eyes filled with something he could not read. Fear maybe, or wonder. The elder sat close to her, arms wrapped protectively around her shoulders, though her own gaze often drifted to the man. Every so often she would whisper something in their language, and the younger would nod, clutching tighter to the blanket around her. When he finally spoke, his voice was tired but steady. "They'll come again. Stronger next time." The elder looked at him. "Then why stay? You have proven your strength. You could leave us and survive." He shook his head, staring into the fire. I didn't save you to abandon you later. The younger gasped softly, her face hidden in her sister's shoulder. The elder's lips parted, but she said nothing, only studying the human as though trying to see through his heart. That night, the cold deepened. The fire's warmth was not enough. The cabin walls groaned under the weight of ice. The human lay down near the hearth, exhaustion finally dragging at his body. He closed his eyes, but sleep came in fragments broken by the echo of blades and hunters' cries in his memory. At some point he stirred awake. Something pressed against him, soft, warm, unfamiliar. His eyes opened to find the younger sister curled beside him, trembling in her sleep. Her small hand clutched the fabric of his coat, as though afraid he would vanish if she let go. He stiffened, unsure what to do, but then he noticed the elder, lying close on his other side. She too had edged nearer to the fire, her body almost touching his. Her silver eyes were open, watching him in the glow. You are warm, she whispered. The human swallowed. The fire is warm. No, she said, voice low and certain. You are warm. He didn't move. He didn't know what to say. Their closeness felt strange, almost fragile, as if one wrong word would shatter the moment. He could feel their trust pressing against him more heavily than any snowstorm. The younger murmured in her sleep, shifting closer until her forehead rested against his chest. The elder reached out, fingers brushing the sleeve of his coat. In our tongue, she whispered, a husband is not only a mate. He is protector, shield, and fire. When we called you that, we did not speak lightly. The human's chest tightened. He had heard the word, but hearing her explain it gave it new weight. He wanted to protest, to say he was just a man, nothing more. Yet the way they clung to him, the way their eyes shone in the firelight, made the words catch in his throat. For a long while, none of them moved. The only sound was the fire crackling, the storm whispering faintly beyond the walls. But peace never lasted long here. Near dawn, the human woke again to a sound outside. This time it was not footsteps, but the distant call of a horn, deep and haunting. The sisters froze, sitting up instantly, their faces drained of color. It is them, the elder said, voice trembling. The hunters gather more. The human grabbed his rifle, his body already tense. How many? Too many, she whispered. The younger clutched his arm, her eyes wide with terror. They will not stop, she said. They will take us back, or kill us. The human looked at them both, their fragile forms shivering in the firelight. He knew she was right. The hunters were regrouping. His cabin would not hold against an army. He stood slowly, resolve hardening in his chest. Then we don't wait for them to come here, we move. We find somewhere they can't follow. The elder shook her head. There is no place safe for us. Our clan has declared us cursed. Anyone who shelters us will face the hunter's blades. He slung his pack over his shoulder, loading ammunition into his belt. Then let them bring blades. I'll bring fire. The sisters stared at him, disbelief mixing with something deeper. Hope. The younger whispered, You will not leave us? He knelt, meeting her eyes. Not now. Not ever. She clung tighter to him, her tears wetting his coat. The elder lowered her head, whispering in her tongue before speaking in broken human words. Then, you are truly our husband. Outside, the horn sounded again, closer now. The storm had ended, but a different kind of storm was coming. The human stood in the doorway, rifle ready, the sisters behind him. He felt their trust like a fire at his back, and he knew the choice had already been made. They were his now. And no hunter, no clan, no storm would take them away. The horn's echo still lingered in the frozen air when the human began preparing. He packed what little food remained, tightened the straps on his pack, and checked his rifle twice. His movements were calm, but inside his mind raced. Hunters were closing in, and this cabin would soon become a cage. The sisters sat by the fire, watching him silently. The younger clung to the elder's arm, trembling, while the elder's eyes followed his every motion. Finally she spoke. You do not have to do this. You saved us once. That is enough. The human glanced at her. Enough for who? For me? For them? He jerked his chin toward the window where the snow stretched endless and deadly. They won't stop because I walk away. They'll stop when someone makes them. The elder's lips parted, but no words came. She lowered her gaze as if the weight of his determination pressed too heavily against her chest. By the time the sun's pale light crept over the horizon, they were ready to leave. The human led the way, rifle in hand, boots crunching against the snow. The sisters followed close, wrapped in blankets, their faint glow marking them even in daylight. The forest stood silent, trees heavy with ice, but he felt eyes on them. Hunters moving somewhere unseen. Every step was tense. The younger stumbled often, but each time he caught her before she fell, steadying her with a gentle hand. She would look up at him with wide silver eyes, whispering something he could not understand. The elder would translate softly. "She says you are stronger than the mountains," he gave a faint smile. "Mountains don't bleed." The elder looked at him with something close to awe. Hours later, they reached a frozen ravine. The human stopped, scanning the cliffs. It was the perfect place, narrow, defensible, a single path through. If the hunters followed, this would be where he made his stand. He turned to the sisters. "Stay behind me. No matter what happens, you don't run." Fear flashed across their faces, but they nodded. The hunters came at dusk. Their horn blasted again, closer, and shadows spilled into the ravine. 6 figures armored and armed with long blades and crossbows. Their masks gleamed under the fading sun. They moved like predators, confident in their numbers. The human raised his rifle. The crack of the first shot echoed through the cliffs, dropping one hunter before he even drew his weapon. Chaos erupted instantly. Arrows whistled through the air. He ducked, fired again, and another fell, snow staining dark beneath him. The sisters cried out, pressed against the cliff wall. The younger covered her ears, trembling, while the elder pulled her close, whispering frantic prayers. A blade slashed across the human's coat, tearing the fabric. He spun, slamming the butt of his rifle into the attacker's mask, shattering it. The hunter collapsed, but another charged from behind. The human barely dodged, his knife flashing as he drove it into the enemy's side. Blood sprayed across the snow, steaming in the cold. The fight was raw, brutal. One man against warriors bred to kill. But the human moved with fury, with purpose. Every strike he made was not for himself, but for the 2 fragile lives watching him. At last, only one hunter remained. He was taller, stronger, his armor heavier than the rest. He stepped forward, pulling off his mask to reveal a face scarred and cruel. His eyes fixed on the sisters and his mouth curled into a sneer. "They are cursed," he spat in broken human tongue. "They belong to no one." The human's voice was steel. "They belong to me." The hunter roared and charged. Steel met steel, rifle against blade, sparks flying in the darkening ravine. The clash shook the sisters to their core. They clung to each other, whispering, "Husband, shield, fire," as though their words could lend him strength, and somehow they did. With a final surge, the human twisted, slamming his knife deep into the hunter's chest. The man staggered, eyes wide, before collapsing into the snow. Silence fell heavy once more. The sisters rushed to him, their small hands pressing against his arms, his chest, as if to make sure he was still alive. He was bleeding from a cut across his side, his breath harsh, but he stood tall. "You fought them all," the elder whispered, wonder in her voice. The younger clung to his coat, her tears hot against the frozen air. "No one has ever fought for us, no one." "But you." The human looked at them both, his jaw tight. "Then you've been with the wrong people." The sisters exchanged a glance, something silent passing between them. Then they pressed their foreheads against his chest, trembling but unbroken. In that moment, the bond was sealed. Not of blood, not of clan, but of fire and battle. They were no longer strangers saved in the snow. They were his, and he was theirs. And as the last rays of sunlight bled across the ice, the human knew this fight was not the end. It was only the beginning. The ravine lay silent, littered with fallen hunters whose bodies steamed in the frozen air. The human stood over them, chest heaving, blood dripping from the cut along his side. His rifle was empty, his knife stained dark, but his eyes were sharp as iron. He had survived. Behind him, the sisters clung to each other, their silver eyes glowing in the fading light. They stared at him with awe, as if he were no longer just a man but something more, a force that even death could not claim. For a brief moment, peace returned. The wind carried only the whisper of snow, and the fire of the setting sun painted the cliffs red. But the human's instincts screamed that it was not over. Hunters never gave up so easily. He was right. From the shadows of the ravine, more figures emerged. Not 6, not 10, but an entire warband. Dozens of hunters moving in formation, their horns blasting as one. The sound shook the cliffs, echoing like thunder. The sisters gasped, gripping his coat in terror. The elder's voice broke. "There are too many. You cannot fight them all." The human tightened his grip on the rifle, though he knew it held no more rounds. His jaw clenched. "Then we make them afraid enough not to try." The sisters exchanged a desperate look. Then, without warning, the elder stepped forward, her hands glowing faintly. She began to chant in her language, words heavy with power. The younger joined her, their voices weaving together, low and haunting. The human turned, startled. "What are you doing?" The elder's silver eyes locked on him. "We are cursed only because we carry the fire of our blood. But with you, maybe it is not a curse. Maybe it is strength." The air shimmered around them. Their faint glow grew brighter, pulsing with each word. The human felt the heat rising from their bodies, warm enough to fight back the cold. The hunters paused, their advance slowing as the sisters' glow lit the ravine like a beacon. They shouted warnings in their tongue, some stepping back, others raising their weapons uncertainly. The elder reached out, her hand trembling but steady. "Husband," she whispered, "take our fire. Together we can stand." The human hesitated only a second. Then he grasped her hand. Heat surged into him, fierce and alive, burning through his veins like molten steel. The younger pressed against his other arm, her glow joining the elder's, and suddenly he felt their strength pour into him. His wounds numbed, his limbs steadied. His vision sharpened until every hunter in the ravine stood clear before him. The warband roared and charged. The human roared back. He moved like fire unleashed, faster than he thought possible. Every swing of his knife burned with light, every strike carrying not only his strength but theirs. The sisters' glow wrapped around him, a shield against arrows, a blade against steel. Hunters fell one after another, their formation breaking in panic. The sisters stood behind him, chanting, their voices unbroken even as exhaustion drained them. The glow around them grew until it lit the sky like dawn, chasing back the darkness. When the last hunter fell, silence crushed the ravine once more. Dozens of bodies lay scattered in the snow, and the survivors fled into the forest, their horns silenced, their courage broken. The human stood in the center, chest heaving, body trembling. The sisters' glow fading slowly from his skin. He dropped to his knees, breath ragged. The sisters rushed to him, catching his shoulders. The younger wept openly, pressing her forehead against his chest. The elder's silver eyes filled with tears she could no longer hide. "You stood against them all," she whispered. He gave a weak laugh, shaking his head. "No, we did." The elder lowered her head, her voice breaking. "You are not only our savior. You are our fire, our shield, our husband." The younger echoed her words, soft but certain. "Husband." The human looked at them both, their fragile forms pressed against him, their trust heavier than any weapon. Slowly he wrapped his arms around them, pulling them close. In that frozen ravine, surrounded by silence and death, a strange truth took root. He had not chosen them, nor they him. But the storm, the hunters, and the fire they shared had bound them together. Not as strangers, not even as rescuers and rescued, but as family. The elder lifted her head, silver eyes glowing faintly in the dusk. "Where you go, we will follow," the younger nodded. "We are yours now." The human tightened his hold, staring into the endless white horizon. He didn't know what dangers lay ahead, or how many more hunters would come. But he knew this. He would not walk alone again. For once the cold did not feel like death. For once warmth lived not only in the fire, but in the sisters pressed against him, whispering the word that now carried more weight than any vow. Husband.